people always have this image of like, oh, like Arabic's a hard language or Chinese is a hard language.
Okay.
And yet anybody who grows up speaking Arabic or speaking Chinese hasn't found it overly difficult. They just speak it is a big problem
Nice.
because we have one H in English. We don't have ha, 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 right? And so, that was one of the early things in learning Arabic was like, I'm saying ha and they're not understanding me because their background, there's three H sounds
Mhm.
and they cannot figure out which one I'm saying. It's like a totally different word. And I'm like, I'm saying H, same word. But if you just memorize the translation, you're missing something. You're missing that there's a whole context and a cultural world behind how we use these words.
In our lives, we go through different situations and cross different bridges. And what all these bridges have in common, it's about our ability to communicate through letters, through words, through emails, and even in our conversations, and even in different languages. Today we had the chance of hosting Mr. Joel, a guy from Texas. He's been in the Arab world for almost 15 years. He's learned the language. We talked about his journey of learning the Arabic language and how the typical method is not the one that you should pursue. There are different methods that can help you understand the language. And by understanding the language, him and his partners were able to start a business in Saudi Arabia by teaching foreigners the Saudi dialect and the Saudi heritage. Please enjoy this episode. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum all. Thank you very much, Mr. Joel, for
You're
being here.
welcome. Nice to be here.
For starters,
Mhm.
you, as an American who's been
Mm.
living in the Arab world,
Mhm.
as just mentioned, for almost 15 years,
Mhm.
and you learned the Arabic language.
Mm.
Let's go back just a bit. What was the driver for you to learn Arabic in the first place?
Yeah, for me in university days in the States, I got to know people from, various countries in the Arab world, Iraq, Maghreb, lots of them.
Mm.
And so I just got interested in the idea and started traveling and spent a little time, traveling around and decided to try to learn it when I went to Jordan. So,
But what was like the main thing that you saw that, let's say, captivated you when it comes to the language? Was it the pronunciation, the depth of the language? What was it exactly and why?
yeah, actually, at the beginning, it wasn't the language itself so much because I didn't know, I was only talking to people in English. This was in Florida in the
Mhm,
States.
mhm,
So it was more just the people, the hospitality, um, I think warmth, kindness, all of those things that made
mhm,
me interested in the region. But I've always had an interest in languages. And of course, if I'm going to go live somewhere, I want to learn the language. So
mhm.
when I went there, I was like, okay, I have to learn Arabic now.
And what was the thing that you felt, or what was your expectations when you first was introduced to the language? Was there any certain expectations, or were there like, you know what, it's just a new world, I want to discover it?
Yeah, for me, it was just like, let's jump in. I think, you know, I, I had not really, I learned a little Spanish in high school, but never really got to the point of really being able to communicate. And so when I found myself in Jordan, immersed, I tried to take every opportunity to practice, which, they're just on the street walking around, you see people just start talking so that you
Mhm.
get practice. So I think I kind of had this idea that it takes mistakes, you have to fail, you have to try.
Mhm.
So go for it, see what happens.
What got you to Jordan in the first place? Were you offered some place and you said, yeah, I want to go there, or did you say, yeah, I want to go to the Arabic world, and whatever country lands on it, I'll
Yeah,
just throw a dice and let's go?
Yeah, I looked at different options. I actually almost ended up in Morocco for a little bit, but
Okay.
instead I found out about, okay, there's a program in Jordan where you can study Arabic and they can also like teach some English on the side. So I did that where I would study Arabic in the morning and teach English in the evening, and it was kind of like this internship type program. Yeah.
Okay. And you, as a person right
Mm.
now, since you were young, as far as I know, correct me if I'm wrong, that you do sometimes learn some languages, as you mentioned Spanish. Did you also get involved with ancient Latin by chance, or
I
no?
did, yeah. Actually, when I
Okay.
was a kid, part of the school program was I had to learn Latin, but you don't speak it. Obviously, it's just
Hmm.
learning the reading and the writing and all of that. So I did that. I did a little Greek, like different things, but it was all reading and writing, like
Hmm.
reading old texts, not
Okay.
like communicating with people.
And did that sort of learning experience help you one way or the other, learning Arabic, or when you got into learning
Mm.
Arabic, it was a whole new world for you. And so tell me more about that. How did you come across learning Arabic? And how did that learning these languages, Latin, Spanish, help you? Did it really help you, or was it like a completely different world?
I mean, I think I always I enjoyed learning languages. You know, I enjoyed learning, here's how we make the different forms in English. Here's how they make it in Spanish or in Latin or whatever else. But I was always a little bit frustrated in learning those languages because there's no communication. You're not like talking to real people. You're just like, okay, well, I read this and I wrote down my translation. Oh, I got 100%. That's fantastic, but I can't actually talk to anyone. So I think those experiences made me generally intrigued by how languages work. But then at the same time, like, okay, if I'm really going to learn a language, I want to actually be able to talk to people, not just be able to read a book. So I think that was the primary kind of driver out of my experiences in school. Yeah.
hmm So if I may, I want to, like, let's say you just said something
Mm,
that kind of took me to another place, which is now when it comes to scripts, or
yeah.
let's say, for example, I'm speaking Arabic,
Mhm.
you're going to translate in English,
Yeah.
or vice versa. Now, what people say in general, that what you speak, when it
Mhm.
translates to another language, it loses some of its meaning.
Mhm.
It's not the same core.
Yeah.
How did you process that when it comes to learning different languages with that regard?
Yeah, it's interesting because when obviously in school, you just like you've got your quiz, you've got your test, you need to memorize the translation and just pass.
Okay.
It's like that was what you had to do. When I started learning Arabic, the program that I entered was a pretty traditional program where we had the vocab list. So you've got English, you've got Arabic, memorize them. And I would literally had a notebook. I would write it in Arabic here, write it in English here, cover up the Arabic, try to remember the English, cover up the English, try to remember the Arabic, and I tried to review every single word every single day. So I was doing by the end, just hundreds of words every day to
Okay.
try to get there. But I didn't realize until maybe at some point in Jordan, but then later when I did my master's in linguistics, I really started to understand more of how inaccurate that was at times. Because I would memorize this English word, but then as you get to know people and you enter the culture and you understand how do they actually use these different words and concepts, you realize we were using that word, but that's not actually what it meant. And so um, yeah, just learning more about languages gave me a much bigger view that you're not just learning a word, you're actually learning a whole world, like a whole context, a whole situation that people use those words in, which can be very, very different depending on the language.
Can you give an example if you don't mind?
Uh, yeah, I mean, the easiest one to use is, and forgive me for this word, but simple one we often think of is okay. Let's just take the simple word dog. Yeah,
Dog. Okay.
yeah. There's a simple Arabic translation for that.
Yes.
But when I
Yes.
say
Kelb.
kelb,
Kelb. Yes.
and I say dog, the same thing does not happen in the mind of the person hearing it in the US versus here.
Okay.
If I say kelb here, what are people thinking?
You're bad mouthing them.
Yeah, it's not a kind word, right? Or at a minimum, dirty animal, whatever.
Yeah.
In the States, we're thinking, oh, my pet, the puppy that I love when I was a kid, right?
Okay.
So, same word, but if you just memorize the translation, you're missing something. Okay, yeah, true, it is a dog and whatever, but you're missing that there's a whole context and a cultural world behind how we use these words. So that's a very simple example, but if you carry that on, there's so many different things that we could use that. Take the word karama,
Okay.
vayafa,
Okay.
dignity, hospitality.
Yes.
Okay, you say you should be hospitable. Yeah, no one's going to say no, you shouldn't, even
Okay.
in America. But the whole concept of liafa very different here than it is in America. So there's a whole set of things from behind that word.
So in a sense, it's about when you say, for example, in the Western culture, when you say someone is hospitable,
Yeah,
it's kind of there are similarities, but yet there are some differences
for
when it
sure.
comes to that.
Yeah.
Now, there's also something that you just said
Mm.
about your memorization technique that you kind of
Yeah.
cover it, you to try to understand. But my question is this: how, when you as an American,
Mm,
you saw that, okay, I'll just give you an example.
mm,
When you talk about a relative,
mm,
we always in their
mm.
world we say that, okay, when it comes to English, have it easy.
Yeah.
Just say cousin,
Cousin and
cousin.
philosophy.
That's
Bus.
it.
Yeah.
We're done. But in the Arabic world, it's
Yeah.
much more in depth. We're talking about uh, banat khalat, banat ammat. You have
Yeah. Yeah.
all these different categories.
For sure.
When it comes to that, how that depth, how did you handle it as a Westerner, a foreigner to the language? How did you
Mm.
take it?
Well, I think this is, yeah, it's the same point about it's reflecting something about the world. And so for me, it was always a point of interest to say, okay, we just say cousin. Here we have, all of these words specifying all the relationships. So trying to understand what does that say about the importance of family, the importance of these relationships. It's not just memorizing the words, but trying to get at that. And so um, I think that's the beautiful thing about language is that it doesn't just give you some new things to say or new people to communicate to, but it actually opens your eyes and your ears to a different world that you were completely oblivious to before. That why does it matter if it's Ibn Khal versus Ibn Am? What's the difference? I don't know. If without entering into that world, you have no idea. And so I think, yeah, it's a beautiful opportunity to kind of enter that.
But do you think, because a lot of times, talking about myself and on behalf of a lot of people who've been through the same thing, that uh, in English, it's easier to say the specific word.
Hmm.
But when it comes to Arabic,
Hmm.
talk about different terminology, talk about the entire English dictionary. If you gather all the words, it will not amount to 1 million.
Hmm.
While in Arabic, we talk about 10 million
Hmm.
words,
Hmm.
unique words.
Hmm.
So that makes it sometimes easier to learn English rather than Arabic. So how did you, because I know that there are some terminologies in Arabic, it's very difficult to find a similar term in English.
Yeah.
So how do you, since you're a person who's been through both
Mm.
languages or you've seen both cultures,
Mm.
how do you kind of separate and say, okay, this word, this is the closest one to it that can match the meaning?
Well, yeah, it's a complex question, I suppose. And though I described my early method of like English to Arabic and memorizing, like I actually don't recommend that to people now. I
What do you
actually recommend
recommend?
that they try to do it immersively. So rather than just getting the equivalent, actually it can feel slower, but in the long run it's faster. And so what I mean by that is instead of learning the English word, you learn the concept as it's explained in Arabic. So someone actually explains it to me in Arabic. So explain to me I don't know what liafa means. Explain it to me. So if someone explains that in Arabic and I understand everything that sort of goes with that, then I'm actually understanding the term instead of forcing it into my English word. So that's what I actually recommend now. And the reason I say it's faster in the long run is one of the problems that I had early on in learning Arabic was by memorizing all the equivalents, Arabic to English. Anytime I'm in a conversation, what has to happen? I have to sit there and my brain has to translate. Okay, they said this. Okay, go in here, come out here with the other language. But if instead I just understand Leafa because I entered in and understood what you mean by it and everything that goes with that, then I don't have to do this whole translation process. So later on I shifted to more of that approach rather than just sort of the memorizing and that helps me avoid the situation that you talk about, which is like I can't find the right English word. I don't need to. I just want to understand it on its own terms.
Okay, so about understanding the context itself.
Yeah.
And has it been successful? Like the success rate compared to the memorization aspect?
Yeah, I think so because I mean, obviously, there's situations where I still have to translate. Like when I used to work at a school, I would translate in meetings between the Saudi staff or Arab staff and the Western staff, and you have to be able to translate. But instead of searching for the one word that communicates it, it's just okay to say, okay, I'm just having to explain around this idea because one word won't do it justice. So I need to give the whole concept.
Okay.
So.
But is it? But correct me if I'm wrong. This way, immersive learning
Mm.
is the best when it comes to, like, say, kids, children. So do we take that same methodology even as adults, one way or the other?
Well, I'm convinced that we should. People have different opinions, of course. It's a little bit different in that you don't have 18 years to work with, right? You need to do it a little faster. So you have
Okay.
to have some special, approaches to do so. But I think you still can. And maybe the other difference is that we do have a little more awareness of grammar, and so we have some more categories to sort of put language in, when we're learning it as an adult that a kid doesn't have yet. But at the end of the day, like lots of people will say, "Oh, I'm bad at learning languages." Are you? I mean, you speak one quite well. Everyone does, right?
Okay.
So, like, why can't we just replicate that process? And largely we can. obviously the older you get, maybe the harder it can become. But generally, I think it's more effective.
And is it truly easy to replicate? Because, like, according to
Mm-hmm.
many sources, I'm
Mm-hmm.
not saying like quoting these sources, but they say when it comes to difficulty of learning languages, you
Mm-hmm.
have Mandarin,
Right.
Russian, Arabic is always like on top
Mm-hmm.
three, always. So, is it truly easy to say, as you just mentioned, replicate? So yes, I've learned my language since I was a baby. They've been telling me, okay, mama, baba,
Yeah.
ammu, khalo. Okay,
Yeah.
so now
Yeah.
so ever since I was young, okay, I try to understand. So replicating that thing with another completely different language, completely different culture,
Mm.
is it possible and will it give me the same results, so to speak?
It's definitely possible. I mean, people do it, and so but there's a lot more going on when you're an adult, right? So kids don't have they're not so worried about making a mistake, right? Baba, mama, they just go for whatever, they just spit back whatever they heard. So um, whereas adults, we get embarrassed, we're worried about making mistakes, we get impatient, we want to go faster, all of these kinds of things. So in my opinion, it's all of those things that make it more difficult. Um, Obviously, the older you get, like you're just tired, you have other things on your mind. So there's lots that can affect your language learning process, but purely in terms of like, can it work to be immersed and to sort of replicate all of that? Absolutely. But the main reason it often doesn't work is people don't hear the language enough at a level they can understand. So in other words, like a kid, how much of the language are they hearing every day? I mean, unbelievable amount, right? I mean, the parents are just constantly talking to them about what's going on and they just absorb it. Well, when you're an adult learning a language, you're not most methods just give you a fairly small list of words for you to hear and then try to memorize. If you try to memorize all of them like I was doing in the notebook, there's only so much you can do per day. Your brain can only handle so much. But if instead you're just hearing it over and over and over again in different ways and different combinations, eventually it just works. Yeah.
So in that perspective,
Mm.
are you a fan of the Green app for languages, or are you not a fan of it when it comes to learning different languages?
I am not a big fan. Yeah.
Why?
Um, well, that's probably unfair to say. I mean, obviously they do so many things well. Their gamification is
The gamification model is
unsurpassed, basically.
yes.
Um, but if you open up the Arabic one, what are you going to try? And of course, I haven't tried all languages in the app, so I don't know. I've only looked at the Arabic.
Okay.
But if you try to learn Arabic, first thing is you're going to learn only Fusha, so you don't really learn any dialect. So then you enter a taxi and say like, "What are you doing?" "Adhaba illa," and it's like, wait, what? So no one talks like that. So that's a problem, I think. And then secondly, it is complete translation.
Hmm.
Um, and actually, if you go to the first lesson, like you can actually pass the lessons and get all your streaks and whatever, and not actually learn anything. So in Arabic, again, I don't know about the other languages. And so like it just has these letters and you memorize the sounds and then, okay, what now? So I don't think you actually learn Arabic in a way that you can communicate with people on it.
Okay. You just mentioned something which is truly amazing, and I'm gonna get back to it.
Yeah.
Which is now you said the word the Fusha, the
Mm,
formal Arabic
mm,
versus the informal Arabic,
mm,
اللغة الدارجة أو
mm,
العامة. So you as Joel, can you please tell me about your journey going
mm,
from, okay, I believe at first you learned some Fusha,
mm.
then you shifted to the dialect. So how was that shift going?
Well, so the program I did, it was in Jordan. So we started with the Ami al-Urdaniya, so Jordanian dialect.
Hmm.
But then very quickly they added Fusha, almost like at the same time. We sort of did it at the beginning. But the focus was always on Amiya. And then, we learned more and more Fusha as we went along.
What's
So
difficult, the Ammiya or
no, Fusha is so much harder. Yeah.
so much else? Okay.
Amiya is, but see, when you mentioned why is Arabic hard, it's listed in these hard languages. That's part of it. Is that as foreigners, it's like we're learning two different languages. You're learning Fusha and you're learning Amiya at the same time,
Okay.
which maybe if you grow up with it, it feels like the same language and they're pretty close together. But for us, it's like as if it's two different languages, like Abi Hanak or Uridu an adhaba ila hunalika. Yeah, it's just like what, these are not the same thing. So it's beautiful. They're both amazing, but it's just you have to learn two different sets of vocabulary and sentence structure.
Okay. But don't you think so? Let me just say kind
Mm,
of a counter argument, or someone
sure.
might say that in order for you to learn about the dialect of the people, you need to
Mm,
first to understand the formal language. So, for example, I want to learn Spanish. I want to
mm,
go to Mexico or Spain or
mm,
whatever.
mm.
I should at least know a bit about the formal Spanish before I understand the street language. Would you agree on that or disagree, and why?
So I would disagree. Though to some extent it depends on like where are you going, what are you going to be doing, who you're going to be interacting with. I mean, there's some caveats to that, but this kind of goes back to what we were talking about with the way children learn versus the way adults learn. So children, most children, if they go to school, they end up learning how to read and write, but they don't start with that, right? They start with how do you communicate? Then they learn, okay, but if you're in a formal setting and you need to read and write, you have to do it a little bit differently. You don't use the exact same language that you do with your friends as when you're writing the paper for school, right? So I think it's the same thing for us. Like we want to communicate with ordinary people, just however they communicate. But yeah, then if you're going to go into a business meeting, you might need to use different vocabulary, different sentence structure, different levels of formality. So, but I think it's quite frustrating to start with the very, very formal for two reasons. One
Mm,
is it actually is just, it's a bit more difficult to learn the
mm,
formal because there's a lot more rules and things you have to memorize.
yes,
But then also you get out to actually talk with people. And yes, it's true in Arabic, like if you speak Fusha, most anyone can understand you, but you won't understand them. So then you're
mm.
out and you're giving this wonderful, amazing Fusha, and then someone responds and you got nothing. So I that's quite a frustrating communicative situation.
Have you ever had these situations? Have you
uh
or been through them?
I mean, yeah, I guess the same thing does happen with dialects, right? So like I learned Jordanian dialect and then I went to Tunisia. And, like they could kind of understand me, but I'm like, I didn't quite understand, maybe I only understood 20% of what they were saying. So definitely it happens even with dialects. And so you kind of have to know which dialect to learn first based on where you're
Exactly.
going. But
That's one thing about the Arabic language or the Arabic world in general, because you
yeah,
talk about, for example, Tunisia, Morocco,
sure.
Algeria. A lot of, let's say, French influence has been there, so a
Yeah.
lot of part of the dialects is in French,
Mhm.
and in some other countries, for example, the dialects there's a bit of English
Yeah,
slash French within,
sure.
and so you would suggest that the person should learn about the dialect, then alongside it they would have the formal
Yeah.
structure rather than having them both at the same time.
And, of course, it depends on their goals. Like if you're a diplomat, you know, for an embassy or something, maybe the formal is more important to you, like because you may be in context where you need to deliver a formal, speech or something. So it does depend on who the person is and what their job is and all of those things. But generally, I'm just for learn how to communicate with actual people instead of just how they communicate in books.
Funny you just said that. Talk about
Mm,
diplomats. Now, here in Saudi Arabia, there's a trend that, not gonna say the trend, but a lot of cases where ambassadors from different countries, like just recently, the British ambassador,
mm,
when he came to Saudi Arabia, the newly appointed British
mm,
ambassador, and I'm not sure if you've seen that video of him
mm,
in the middle of the souk, and he's talking
mm.
like in a Saudi dialect, like I'm
Yeah.
going with my bazura,
Yeah.
going to catch that. He's like talking, like communicating
Yeah.
with the people in that dialect. So, do you think in a lot of cases, even when it comes to diplomats, higher ups, and
Mm.
so on and so forth, you need to learn the dialect of that language
Yeah.
to fully immerse yourself within the people?
I mean, yeah, I'm 100% for learn dialect, learn dialect,
Hmm.
add on Fusha if you need it. That's my thinking because I do think Fusha has value. But just depending on your specific job requirements and what you need to be able to do, like some diplomats have to be able to pass a test in Fusha. Like
Okay.
it's like part of their job requirement. So okay, in that case, you have to do what you have to do. But like, just recognize that you're going to mostly use Ami if you're going to actually talk with people.
Do they get through? Do they go through the Arabic grammar, مبتدأ, مضارع, خبر, or
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I did that too. You learn all
how,
these
how
things.
how was it? How was it? Honestly,
It's fine. Like grammar doesn't bother me, but some people hate having to learn the grammar stuff. I like languages. I think it's interesting. It's fine. But the thing is, you can learn all of that without knowing the names, right? I mean, you can,
okay,
they talk about native speaker intuition is like, even if you don't know the words, you can tell, does that sound right or does that sound wrong? Like that's people who grow up in one language, they have this intuitive sense of what is
okay,
right and
okay.
wrong or what is accepted or not accepted. As a non-native speaker, I don't immediately have that unless I get so much input and get so used to hearing it that it starts to feel that way. I don't know why it's wrong, but I know it's wrong. So you can do it that way too. But a lot of people want to know the names and why is this mubtada or khabar or whatever else.
So now you've developed that intuition. So if I say a word, you would immediately try to This is of French origin. This is not an Arabic.
Well, yeah, maybe that, or maybe it comes out as a lot in grammar and stuff like, is this the right form or things like that. But
Okay, okay, nice.
yeah.
But how many dialects have you, let's say, interacted with in Arabic so far?
I mean, I've only intentionally like worked at Jordanian, like Shami
Hmm.
dialect, and then Saudi. But when my previous job, it was a quite mixed environment. So we had Jordanians and Syrians and Palestinians and Egyptians and Saudis, of course. And so uh, I heard a lot of dialects, and sometimes had to translate in meetings for all of them. And so over time, I got more familiar with at least those ones.
Because you see a lot of that, and each dialect has some
Yeah,
their own words they use.
for sure.
And so for you to take that and try to come up with your own dialect in
Yeah.
that regard.
Well, in some of the studies, I'll watch TV shows, and of course, TV shows, even if it's mostly like Saudi dialect, for example,
Hmm.
there may be an Egyptian character or Jordanian character or whoever else, and so you hear some different dialects, and it's good to be aware of various ones.
Okay. Now, this is from a language perspective.
Mhm.
Now, going from the language perspective, and I believe also from within the linguistics aspect,
Mm,
also it shifts back to the psychology of the person, how it
mm,
affects him mentally. And so that it's from a mentality, a way of thinking or
yeah.
approaching things or viewing it. So, Joel, English versus Joel, Arabic. What would you say the main differences when it comes to you while speaking or thinking in English, or while you're speaking or thinking in Arabic? The main differences between.
Well,
Uh,
it's interesting how things develop over time. Like I I generally in my life, particularly growing up, I was not overly friendly, particularly to strangers, people I don't know well. Was not the type to go and just talk to people out and about. But when I first started trying to learn Arabic, I just convinced myself that if you want to learn, you have to practice. Well, if you want to practice, you have to talk to people.
okay.
And so everywhere I went in Jordan, like, the Bagala or Dukan, they say there,
Mm, yes.
everywhere, just stop, ask people questions, practice everything I could say, even when it wasn't very much. So I do think actually that affected me in many ways, that I'm generally like enjoy going out and talking to people in Arabic more than English.
Okay.
Because I didn't do that growing up in English, whereas in Arabic it just became part of, this is how I live in
Hmm.
Arabic. So it's interesting that I actually do feel like friendly, more extroverted in Arabic than in English.
Hmm.
Um, so that's probably one of the big ways that stands out. I think also, in Arabic, or particularly in Saudi, there's a lot more of the greetings, كيف الحال؟ شو الأخبار؟ وشني عنك؟ شو طيب؟ You do all of these things, which we don't really do in English.
Hmm.
And so, probably still naturally inside, I don't think that way. But when I'm in conversation with Arabic, it does just kind of flow out more now, because over time you just sort of soak, oh, if I'm talking Arabic, like that's how you honor people. In English, that would not be honoring to people, because that's not what we do in English. And so there's probably some difference there in how I communicate. Mm,
Hmm. And from that regard, when I let's say,
mm,
when I hear your opinion on something. Now, a lot of people came in with with the thing that okay, when you go to Arabic countries, you don't need to learn
mm,
Arabic. A lot of
yeah.
sometimes some foreigners like they stay here, they don't learn Arabic language.
Mm,
While in other places, like there's one time I've come across a distinguished Indian engineer,
mm,
and he told me I went to Algeria
mm,
and I stayed there for almost 6 years.
mm,
And I tried to communicate with them in English. They said, "We're not gonna communicate with you.
mm,
Learn French. You have to
mm,
learn French for us to communicate with you." So he was put in a situation where he had to learn French.
yeah.
Now, some people, when they come to certain countries, they don't feel obligated to learn the
Mm,
country's language because their life is going all right.
mm.
Do you think that yes, in some cases, you should put people in that environment, that okay, if you're staying in that place, you should learn the language and at least understand the culture for you to immerse yourself rather than dissect yourself and stay away from the society? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose there's a sense in which we have to recognize that people end up in different situations. They will stay for different lengths of time.
Mhm,
And so the expectations of kind of what people will acquire or what they should acquire,
mhm,
it can be quite different. If your plan is to come work here for 5 years, it's different than if you're on a 6 month,
mhm.
contract or something. So, we probably shouldn't be too like, you should do this and this is the only way or whatever. But I think generally, like, yeah, if you're going to go somewhere, I think you should try to not just learn like what I want to say in their language, but I should actually want to understand the place and the people and the
Mm,
heritage of this new world that I'm living in.
mhm,
And I think language is one of the main ways that we do that.
mhm.
I just think generally operate on the principle of like you would want to do to others, what you want them to do to you.
Uh-huh.
And I think people would want to, I hope people would want to understand where I come from and things like that. So I should do the same in reverse.
Mhm. And one more thing you just said, going back to a point where you just said about the depth of the language itself. Now, when you say a term in English and first you say a term in Arabic,
Mm,
are you in a level or at a point where you understand the depth? So, for example, when you go to United States and you say that person is generous,
mm,
first you go to Saudi Arabia or any Arab country, هذا شخص كريم.
yeah.
How does it formulate within your head at the moment when you say that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've never thought about that specific question before, or that specific word in that
Mhm.
way. But as soon as you say that, two different images popped in my head. So like in
Okay.
English, generous, what I imagine is someone like donating money.
Okay.
That's what I immediately like in
Linked.
English
Okay. Okay.
clicked because that's sort of I guess in the U.S. context,
The image
the
that.
image that came to mind anyway. Um, but Kareem, what comes to my mind is a little bit more along the lines of, I mean, it might be also giving money to people, I don't know, but like the hospitality and like, honoring people by providing more food than you need to,
Okay.
um, and within that, perhaps caring for the poor, but it has a little bit more of a tangible, personal relationship more
Okay.
than just I'm sending money to some organization. So
Okay.
I don't know if that's 100% accurate, but like that, those are the two different images that came to mind by the two different words. So
Okay. So that's sense that you just said, this becomes the idea of okay, they have the individualistic society and the collectivist
sure,
society, how it works. Because just now, I can be, let's say, living in my mansion or whatever. I can just like in United States,
sure,
and I send 20 million to some
yeah,
charity, and okay,
mashallah.
I'm I'm generous in
Yeah.
that regard, in that context.
Uh,
While on the other hand, I can be in Saudi Arabia, I can be generous even though I'm not as rich,
hmm,
but at least like my doors are open,
yeah,
everybody can come in. I host let's say point nights.
hmm,
People can come in, they might talk, they might ask, I might provide them some dinner. So
sure.
that's the kind of thing you might try to tap
Mhm.
into.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and again, I'm not saying that, obviously, we're not saying that people in America are only generous in this way
Yes.
and people in Saudi are only generous this way,
Yes.
but just the language itself evokes different, images. And I do think it comes down to a little bit that, yeah, I am individually generous in that I determine my income and then decide I'm going to give X to whatever cause I believe
Mhm.
in. That's maybe the more what comes to mind with the American situation. Whereas, as you said here, what came to mind was a more communal, like relationship oriented kind of thing, and I'm sure that's reflected in many ways in the language. Individualistic versus communal.
Okay. And now, from after you gathered and absorbed and
Mm,
learned Arabic,
mm,
as far as I know, please correct me if I'm wrong, I'd like to hear that story
mm.
that you shifted from learning the language to teaching it, one way or the other. So
Yeah.
tell me more about that shift and how it started.
Yeah, so of course I don't teach the language myself, but yeah, we do, help run a company here that provides that. And really the beginning of it was simply several Americans trying to learn Arabic and Saudi dialect in particular and couldn't find anywhere to do so. So, like even when I first moved here, I found a tutor and just tried to like, here's the activities I want to do. Can you do these with me? And it was okay, but it wasn't super effective. And so it came out of this. We want to actually, help other people solve the same problem that we are also experiencing.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, several American guys got together and founded a company for that, and combining tech and business and then linguistics to try to make it happen. So,
But how did it come by? So, for example, were you sitting and said, you know what? We are very distant from the Saudi dialects.
yeah,
Because sometimes, honestly, before, let's say, when I first got to learn English, we
yeah,
always when I go to an English learning
mm,
institute, and the teacher comes in and say Assalamu alaikum. We all, oh wow, the guy speaks Arabic. I bet. Wa alaikum assalam.
yeah,
So then now it shifted to a point where now even some trends. Some people are from Britain and even America, where they speak like whether it's being Egyptian dialect, Saudi
Mm,
dialect,
mm.
Shami dialect. When we see that, it's like, okay, now this is going to a next level.
Yeah.
So tell me more about that. So when you got to each other, what was the conversation? What did you say that, okay, we had this, we need to tap into this and we need to do that. What happened in that behind the scenes kind of thing?
Yeah, well, I mean, part of it was all of us had been here for, different amounts of time, but years, not like a few months. And so had tried different things, had tried tutors, had tried this, had tried that, tried studying more from Jordan, but then you have a different dialect. And
Hmm.
so a lot of various attempts had been happening. And
Okay.
so in light of all that, we all, various connections became friends. And so we're just kind of talking about, oh, you're trying that, or you're trying that, or you're trying that. Okay, well, we're all trying the same thing, and it's kind of frustrating because it's
Mm.
not going well. And so then, that was around the same time. This is like in 2019,
2019, before COVID.
before COVID.
Okay.
And so, or even 2018, maybe we first started talking about it.
Okay.
2019, there was more serious kind of like,
So it was, at first it was just conversations.
yeah, like, hey, this would be an idea. Hey, what if there was a company that did this? Hey, would you want to do that? Would you, there's some of that.
Okay.
So actually, the three other guys, I was working at a school during that time, and so they kind of ran with the idea, and I wasn't able to jump in right away. But we'd had this conversation, and so then shortly after they got registered, commercial registration, all that in Saudi, which was in 2020, uh,
That was like at COVID at that time.
December 2020. So like COVID's still a thing, but
Okay.
not at the beginning.
Okay.
Um, that's when they got registered, and then I joined them about 6 months in. I quit my job and
Oh,
joined them.
okay.
And so since then we've been going at it.
So, but let me go back just a bit. So, what did you exactly try that got you to the point where you're frustrated? That okay, I tried to learn Saudi dialect, and there was no guide. So, what did you and your partners do specifically?
Hmm.
So, that I just want to know what are the do's and don'ts to learn a certain.
Well, it goes back to some of the things we were already talking about. So, like, one of them found a guy, just a tutor, I don't remember how, on the internet somewhere, and was meeting up with him, but he was very insistent on teaching Fusha. And so, like, over time, one of the frustrations was that he was like, okay, is this Saudi dialect or is this Fusha? And he's like, no, 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 you just learn this, And so he had a very insistence on, very strongly insistent on Fusha. And
Okay.
so that was a frustration for him. Uh, Honestly, like, one of the frustrations was that, when you find a tutor, this is not their full-time thing generally, or at least at that time. And so for some of us, like, we were trying to put serious effort, hours and hours every week, but
Hmm.
we couldn't get people to actually show up enough consistently, like always be there, when we need it, because we're trying to fit it into our schedule.
Mm.
So that was a little bit of a challenge, which, company can solve because it sort of provides the consistent, presence of someone to help you. And then also training was the other issue. It was like, okay, because we all had, I had a background in linguistics. One of the other guys had a background in linguistics. We had some ideas about here's how we want this to go, but just getting someone to do exactly what we were wanting them to do. They had their own ideas about what to do, and
Okay.
so that was a little bit of a challenge at times.
Clash of ideas.
Yeah, I mean, not
Clash.
like not like conflict or anything, but just like they want to do it this way, I want to do it this way, so this
Okay.
isn't a great fit.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and then from that point on, you said, okay, and I've seen that you have a certain methodology of
Mm,
how you're gonna do it. So you started at 2020.
mm.
At first, how was your beginning at that business? Was there high demand? Was there something, or was it like, okay, you know what, let's just try for the first 6 months. If it goes well, we continue. If it doesn't go well, we
Yeah.
shut it off. How was the mentality at that time?
So the first language sessions happened in March 2021. So it was established 2020. It took some time just to, like, get the office and get everything set up and
Okay.
hire and all of that. So
You didn't believe in online at that time?
so actually the very first sessions were online,
Okay.
but they were delivered from the office. So
Okay.
um, yeah, we, from the beginning had this idea of doing some online, but then also in person, trying to do both.
Hybrid.
A hybrid, yeah, or just different clients want different things.
Okay.
Um, So some of the first people were like getting ready to move here, and they wanted to do like intensives. They're actually doing like 20 something hours a week, trying to like get as much as they could before they actually moved to Saudi. So they were online from Europe actually.
Okay.
But then, other people started coming in person, online and whatever. But, kind of August towards the end of that 2021, we started offering, hey, free trial, come in and check it out a little, and so it started picking up a little bit, and then kept growing from there. Yeah.
And you're the people who were training, or you brought some
No,
trainers?
we hired 6 Saudis, and then trained them in our method. That was the
Okay,
beginning. Yeah, so only Saudis have ever delivered the sessions. Yeah.
okay, okay. That's a good thing. So I want to know, what was your criteria of picking these Saudis, and what kind of methodology did you teach them so that they can, okay, this is our methodology. We want you to deliver one, two, three. These
Mm,
are the certain outcomes that we want. So
yeah.
how did you go across that journey?
Well, the hiring, we do something a little bit interesting. So the first interview is a group interview. So it's not a one-on-one interview.
Okay,
There's like
group.
up to 12 people in the room applying
Wow.
for the job,
So put them all in one room.
all in one room.
Okay,
And this is how we do it ever since 2020. This is or
okay,
2021. This is how we've been doing it.
okay.
So,
Interesting.
and it's intentional because the job that we're asking them to do is to spend hours every day interacting with other people.
Okay.
And so we want to see not just how do you interact with me who's interviewing you, but how do you interact with other people? Maybe
And
those other people say something that annoys you. How do you handle that?
so the other candidates.
The other candidates.
Okay.
So we'll ask a question like, what is Saudi culture to you? And then they have different answers. And generally they kind of agree, but like, sometimes someone says something and someone else doesn't agree with that. How are they going to handle that? We want to observe those dynamics.
Okay.
And
Okay.
we'll ask them, some other questions, which I won't give all the details, but
Okay. So
we give them like a hypothetical situation, make them work in groups to come up with their answer, because we
oh,
want to see how are you going to, are you going to talk over everybody else? Or are you actually going to listen? Because the same thing, if you're helping people learn language, you got to be very patient. You got to listen. Sometimes language learners, in the early levels, they talk painfully slow, right? I mean, it's just they're learning. So you have to be so patient and let them get it out and don't interrupt them, let them go. And so we want to watch all of that. And then if they pass that, then we invite them to an individual interview where we actually check more like language and do we think they can teach well and things like
okay.
that.
So let me. So out of the first 12,
Mhm.
how many proceed usually?
Depends. It's, 2 to 4. Yeah.
2 to 4, and these 2 to 4, you filter them out
Yeah.
to have that situation. So,
Mm.
because now, so the thing is, I want to know. So I'm trying to imagine myself in that situation where I'm put in a room and
Yeah.
I have all the other 12 candidates.
Uh-huh.
I have Abdurrahman, I have Salah here. They
Mhm.
are my other candidates,
Yeah.
guys behind the camera. And okay, so you are you ask us you ask me the question,
Mhm.
and I have so you're kind of putting me in a way because now my mentality is I'm competing with these other 12,
Could be,
and
yeah.
yeah, but at the same situation you're trying to put me in a situation where I have to work with them.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah,
try,
so we learn a lot about people,
okay,
as people, and because really the first interview, we're just trying to figure out as a person, are you a good fit for our company? We're not trying to ask yet, will you be an effective, person in your language sessions? We just want to know, are you the type of person that fits with kind of the values and the vision of what
the
we're trying to,
environment in
the
general.
environment we're trying to accomplish here.
Okay,
But then in the individual interview, of course, we have to go into. So we actually in the individual interview, we model for them like a beginner language session and kind of walk them through as if they're the person learning, and then we flip it around and say, okay, do what I just did, and then watch to see if they can do
okay. And what is that methodology that you have done this extreme process to
it.
get to?
Yeah, so I mean, it comes on the after decades of linguistic research. So, but it is this immersive method. So, it, in some ways, linguists might call it a direct method, where we don't use the translation. So we literally will put like physical in the beginning. If someone knows no Arabic, even from day one, we don't use English. Like there's no translation even on the first day.
Okay,
So how do we do that? Well, you have to have specific activities that support them. So one of the things we do is we'll put, if it's in person, put physical objects in front of them. If it's online, it's pictures. And
okay,
so it's very simple. You just start with two things like, okay, this is a water bottle, this is a coffee cup. Where is the water bottle? And they point. Well, if you hear between two things, you can actually understand that and just respond, even though you know no English,
okay,
no Arabic in that example.
okay,
And so هذا فنجان, هذه قارورة, whatever it is, وين القارورة, and then they point.
okay,
And then we just keep adding them. And so in a 2-hour session, they might learn 30 to 40 words that way.
okay,
But then quickly, it becomes okay, put the coffee cup next to the red car, which is next to the, and we start adding these sentences and they're just responding. And so that's this, when I was mentioning earlier about you have to have volume of input and comprehension, so linguists call that comprehensible input. Like you just have to have a large quantity of it. And if you get it enough and sequenced in the right way and with a lot of review, what ends up happening is down here, the first time you hear it, you're like, I've heard that word before. Then you
Okay.
hear it again, you're like, I've heard it, I'm pretty sure I know what it means. Third time you hear it, you're like, I know what that means if I see it with all these other objects.
Okay.
But eventually, I know that word, I can say it, I can use it, I don't even have to think about it. So that's
Okay.
sort of the method that we teach them in the beginning. And later on, there's other activities, of course. But
Okay. But when you say immersive,
Mhm.
what length of time are we talking about in that regard?
Well, so what we're saying is that the actual language session itself is immersive. Obviously, we don't
Mhm,
control what people do in the rest of their life. They may or
mhm,
may not
mhm,
be trying to do that.
mhm,
Probably not. If they're going to work their job, they're just got to do their job and they're using English. But at least when they enter the language session, we
mhm,
want that to be an immersive environment.
mhm.
And so our sessions are between 1 and 2 hours typically, and some people do more 4 or 5 hours in a row. But most people are doing 1 or 2 hours at a time.
And so at first you try to, as mentioned, putting that physical aspect in front of
Mhm.
them. So to which point where you say, okay, now you're eligible to handle the dialect. Let's talk about the dialect itself.
Well,
Oh,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I want to know when what at what level do you say, okay, now we're going to talk more about the Saudi dialect and the Saudi heritage and the Saudi culture, and how do you fit it within the curriculum, so to speak?
Yeah, so our approach, well, I'll say a bit more about the later levels because that's
Mhm.
where they get a lot more with that. But even from the early levels, we do the Saudi dialect. So, they learn Saudi words like finjal, not finjan,
Finjal, okay.
So, um, so it's sort of like put in everything that they learn from the beginning. But
Mm-hmm.
we're not sitting there explaining to them, oh, by the way, in Jordan they say this, and in Egypt they say this, and in Saudi they say this. No, we're just showing them finjal, how the finjal, okay, and they learn that for the coffee cup. So. Um, but there's culture embedded in it. So our guides, when they hand them the coffee cup, they're going to do it with their right hand, not their left hand, right?
Okay,
So it's implicit. Like we're not explaining everything along the way.
okay,
As they progress through the levels, though, so that's kind of level one is the physical objects, and it's just building. The goal is to get them to learn 1,000 words of vocabulary in Saudi
okay.
dialect,
1,000 words.
1,000 words,
Okay,
um, in their first 100 hours. And then after that, we use picture stories. So they now have this basic vocabulary, but they need to learn how to kind of tell stories and understand stories
okay,
using all those words. Level three, all the picture support goes away. Like there's no more pictures, it's just audio and conversation. And
okay.
so and then eventually in some of these different things we have um like stories from Saudi culture, topics from Saudi culture,
So,
but they've acquired enough vocab that they're talking about it in Arabic, not in English.
such as what? I would like to hear what
Oh, all
stories.
sorts of things like hospitality, like
Mm,
marriage, like yeah, heritage, history. I mean, all of these things are topics, but we have, and so our staff have made recordings of these in Saudi dialect about Saudi. And so as people access it, instead of like, just getting a lecture about Saudi heritage in English, they're hearing it in Arabic, in Saudi Arabic from Saudis. And then out of that, they learn lots of new words. And then each new word is like a whole nother window into another aspect of the culture that
Okay,
they then, get new understanding from. So
okay. So that's so now. So how long has the business has been, like, let's say, or the your company has
yeah,
been,
we're 4.5 years coming up on 5 years.
four and a
So
half years? So
mhm.
during this 4.5 years, what was the, let's say, the biggest challenge that you faced with people coming in, trying to learn the language
Mhm.
and the dialect and the culture? What was the biggest challenge that you faced?
Oh, I
Oh,
mean, there's all sorts of challenges running a business anywhere, right? Like
but
start.
specifically in the linguistics
Oh, on the
departments.
linguistic side, yeah. Yeah, one of the challenges is that our method we recognize is different. Like we're asking people to not use English.
Okay.
That is not most people's experience of language learning. I mean, everybody has tried to learn another language, at least probably in school.
Mm-hmm.
And in school, it's all about like memorize the translation so you can pass the test,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
We don't do tests, like written tests. Um,
No written tests.
no written tests. Yeah, it's because we're focusing on communication.
Okay.
We want, you can write everything perfectly, but if you can't talk to someone, what's the point? I mean, that's I learned in school, I
Mm-hmm.
can pass all the written tests, but I couldn't talk to anyone. Like, what was the point of that?
Okay.
So, So it's different. And we asked them to come in and do this immersive thing where they intensely listen. They actually speak very little at the beginning because we want them to get used to the sounds before they speak. Because and so trying to convince people that this is, even though it's weird, it's different. We know it's crazy. It sounds crazy to you, but like it's actually better for you in the long run.
Hmm.
That can be difficult. And so we've made some accommodations over the time. So we actually send them all the words in English ahead of time, so they kind of know what's coming. So we've also had to adjust and learn, how to make this, easy for people, particularly people who are busy,
Okay.
because that is also a challenge. Like, if you really want to learn Arabic, it takes time. But if you're low on time, how do you do that? And so, those are some of the challenges. Mm.
What are the challenges that you faced, or that was the biggest one in the moment?
I mean, that's a big one. I mean, I suppose for us, this is less on the linguistic, but this method that we use has typically, or the kind of language learning research that we took from is primarily people who were like dedicating 20 hours a week to it, that kind of thing,
Okay.
like intensively trying to learn. And what we've tried to do is make it more accessible to more people. So that's gone through iterations over the years, but like now our method is like you can get on and book a session for 2 hours from now, for 1 hour, 1 or
Okay.
2 hours. And
Okay.
so but the challenge with that is, that's there. There's lots of websites where you can, book as you go or whatever. But the difference is when you're doing that with a random tutor, tutor A may use one method, tutor B uses a different method. So
Okay.
there's no consistent journey. Whereas for us, because we train everyone in this method, you may book today with someone at 9 or at 8:30 at night, and you may book 8:30 tomorrow in the morning with a different person, but they know exactly what you did, and your learning journey will be consistent. And
Okay.
so trying to figure out how to make all that work, has been what we've spent all this time trying to
I
do.
can make it create one whole system that doesn't
Exactly.
break in that regard.
Yeah.
So, but my question is this: when it comes to the Saudi dialect aspect
Mm,
itself,
mm.
so there are a lot of Saudi dialects. You have
That's right.
from
Yeah.
the east, the west, Jeddah, Al Hassan, Najd, Shimal, Janub,
Yeah.
Abhas, Kaka, Arar. All these are different cities and different
Mhm.
dialects. Even within the same city,
Yeah.
you have different dialects.
Sure.
So, have you also went in depth to these dialects, or was it like, okay, you know what, the white Saudi dialect? We're not gonna get too deep into that. All
Yeah.
well,
Yeah. I mean, as far as like what we sort of help people learn at the beginning, we do the Lahja Bayda, the sort of generic urban dialect is how we normally explain it. It's
mhm,
kind of like Riyadh, Jadid Damam, like you'll be understood. You'll be
mhm,
able to generally understand people. Of course, there's some differences, but um, so that's kind of what we aim at. But the way that our program is structured, and again, this is different than most language programs. Each level has the vocab you're going to learn. Like here's your list.
mhm.
We don't have that after level one. There's no list. And the reason is that you are listening to resources, and then or doing these picture books, and there's lots of different things that you'll encounter. But in the midst of that, the specific language guide that is with you is going to explain words in their own dialect. So we have guides from Al Hassa, we have guides from the Hijaz, from Medina, from Jeddah, from Abha, from all over the country. And so different words naturally will come out. And so we think that's good. Like people get exposed to not just one narrow Saudi dialect, but they get exposed to a lot of different things. And
Okay.
so we there are people in Jeddah who want the Hijazi more. That's fine. We have guides from there. They can help them with that. And we have guides, people here in Najd, they want that more. So that's fine. We have it all. But we think it's good to get exposed to a range of those
Because
differences.
even sometimes you as Saudis, when for example, ever since I moved into Riyadh,
Yeah.
yes, I've been exposed to like a lot of Najdi,
Yeah.
Hijazi,
Yeah.
and yes, the difference is yes, we understand each other, but there's
Sure.
always been that moment where a person says a term and you're like, "What do you mean by that? Can you please repeat?"
Yeah.
Yeah, I said that. What do you mean by that? Yeah,
Yeah.
please just try to explain it.
For sure. Yeah.
But in general, what was you would say the success story? Are there any success stories where you say that yes, a person came in
Hmm.
and at the end he immersed himself within the language and he, let's say, I'm not gonna say the word mastered, but he was able to have a full conversation with someone in the Saudi dialect.
Yeah, we have lots. I mean, lots of people, but also, I suppose at each level there's success stories, right? So
Okay.
to some extent, it depends on the person's goal. Our program is like 1,500 hours if you want to go from the beginning to sort of the end. 1,500 hours plus, depending on your goals. The end of the journey is not perfection. very difficult to achieve. The end of the journey, at least with us, is can you sit in a group of Saudis and they're all talking and you can understand what's going on? And we have people who've been able to do that through our program, and enter into the conversation, but at various points in our program, like there's huge successes that people have. Being able to sit and have one-on-one conversations is also a huge success.
Hmm.
It's a lot easier than sitting in a group. Just that's the nature of language. But we have, many, many people who, have been able now to sit down and have full conversations with their friends. And of course, even at the level of the beginners, we have clients who are here for 10 years, never learned any Arabic.
Mm.
Then they finally come, okay, I'm going to do this. And we help them get there, even level one, the beginner. But now at their workplace, they're dropping, greetings and phrases and learning new words. And even the whole method of like, what is this? This is, and like learning that, they go replicate that with their colleagues. Oh, there's new things. I don't know this one. Tell me what this one is.
Okay.
So it creates, for many people, I think, even if they don't get to fluency, because that wasn't their goal, it does create a more enjoyable life for them here in Saudi
More of
Arabia
connection
and more
with.
connection with people. Yeah.
Okay. So from that regard, do you in your business as well or your institute, do you take people out to like certain, let's say, people like Kashta or certain festivals so that people
Mm,
fully immerse themselves within the experience, or you just tell them, okay, we recommend you go to a majlis or someplace where Beit Shar or whatever,
yeah.
that you go there and you immerse yourself within the within the culture.
We've done limited attempts. So some of our corporate contracts, we took them like, to the Camel Festival and different things like this,
Okay.
in the past. It's not been a huge part of what we've done so
Hmm.
far. It's kind of on our radar to do more of. Um, but our clients go out and do these things and we get to hear the stories of like,
Okay.
particularly with because when they learn language, then they start making friends with Saudis more. You make friends with Saudis more, ashan of the alpha,
So they have, and then you
because of
then
the hospitality, they get invited to do all sorts of things, and it's great. And so, but as a business, we have not done a lot of that just yet, but it's on our radar.
okay. Possibly.
Uh,
The thing is, since you've seen, let's say, I believe you've dealt with a lot of nationalities
hmm,
that want to learn Arabic.
yeah.
Are there any certain, let's say, because I believe in linguistics, correct me if I'm
Hmm,
wrong, that if you're sometimes if the language is close to you,
hmm,
you might be able to learn it a bit faster. So, for
hmm,
example, they
yeah.
said there's a lot of similarity between Arabic and Spanish. A
Hmm,
lot of, let's say, common terms,
hmm,
common terminologies, or have the same origins.
sure.
So, is it like true, for example, if a Spanish guy or someone who's Latin from Latin background
Hmm.
might be able to learn Arabic faster? Talk about in general. I'm not gonna say with exceptions.
Hmm.
Might be able to learn Arabic faster than someone who is from a pure English background, or not necessarily.
Yeah, it's interesting, because like people always have this image of like, oh, like Arabic's a hard language or Chinese is a hard language.
Okay.
And yet anybody who grows up speaking Arabic or speaking Chinese hasn't found it overly difficult. They just speak it, right?
Okay.
So there's nothing inherent about the language. I mean, linguists argue this, that there's nothing inherent about one language that makes it harder than another. What does make it more difficult is which language you come from, as you're mentioning. So for example, like we have many clients actually that their native language may be Urdu. Well, in Urdu, they already know a number of words or crossover, maybe because of Islam and so on. There's Arabic words in Urdu language, and then also the letters. They already know the letters,
Mm.
and so many of the sounds they're already used to. So of course, aspects of learning Arabic will be easier for them than for me, coming from English, where we don't have ha and kha and gha and
Huh.
none of the same letters and all of this. So of course, that can make it easier. I don't know about Spanish specifically, if that makes it easier. And one of the challenges, when we try to like answer this, is that there's so many variables. There's the language you come from, but there's also like the culture you come from. So let's say you're from a very like warm, communal, relational culture, and that's also your personality, and and therefore you jump in and you don't worry about making mistakes. You just want to connect with everybody. Yeah, your speaking will probably develop faster because you're just trying all the time,
Hmm.
as possible. On the other hand, sometimes people who are, this is maybe more personality than culture even, but people who are maybe quieter, they don't jump in as much. They may actually, their speaking may not develop as fast, but sometimes their comprehension develops faster because they're just sitting there listening, they're absorbing all the time. So my point is simply to say, it's not so easy to just say, oh, well, you're from this background and you're from this background, therefore it'll be easier from you, because personality, culture, language background, all of it comes together in affecting how you actually experience learning a new language.
Okay, so in that context, correct me
Hmm.
if I'm wrong, if I'm saying it right, that, for example,
Hmm.
I live in the Western community,
Sure.
let's say in Britain,
Hmm.
Ireland, Spain, France. Uh, from a culture-wise perspective,
Hmm.
I might be able to connect with the English language speakers better than those who are from the west, from the east, say India, China, even the Middle East. From a connection-wise perspective, culturally,
Hmm.
that would might affect my language as well.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose there certainly are things that affect us in that way. It's hard to make generalizations because
Yes.
as much as I learn about, like, as much as I even learn about Saudi culture, you realize all Saudis are different too. Like, there's all these differences, right? And so
Yes.
it's pretty hard to make
Assumptions of.
super strong generalizations, I
Mhm.
think. Maybe in some of those cases there is the linguistic element, which is, a lot of like Spanish, French, Italian, and all that. Like they have a root from Latin, and so there's a lot of shared words that if you already know one of those, it is a lot closer. That's kind of the point we were talking about earlier. And so that would certainly help, and
Okay.
maybe maybe if the cultural world is more similar, sort of the assumptions that are being worked from, then but that can be dangerous too, because sometimes when something feels closer, you assume it is the same, but that assumption could be wrong, and then it actually led you astray. And it's the same thing with language. We have it's called language one interference. You know, your back past language could help you, but sometimes it can also like obstruct a little bit. And so,
In what sense?
um, yeah, I mean, L1 interference. Maybe one of the simplest examples is certain letters don't exist or sounds don't exist in one language than another.
Hmm.
And so when I'm trying to communicate, you know, um, I use the letter the way my language does, not the way the new language does. So, for example, in Arabic to English, H is a big problem
Right.
because we have one H in English. We don't have ha, 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 right? And so, that was one of the early things in learning Arabic was like, I'm saying ha, and they're not understanding me because their background, there's three H sounds
Mhm.
and they cannot figure out which one I'm saying. It's like a totally different word. And I'm like, I'm saying H, because we only have one. So my,
Okay.
my first language is interfering with my ability
Mhm.
to communicate effectively, or sometimes even to hear it effectively. Like I
Okay.
literally can't hear the difference between the three sounds.
Okay. Okay. Because I believe I watched a video like quite a while ago
Uh,
that like which Arabic letter do you
mm,
find the short? They asked a lot of multiple, let's
yeah,
say, foreign
yeah,
students, and they asked them which Arabic letter is the hardest.
yeah,
A lot of them said kha or da, like
yeah,
da,
yeah,
because a lot of that.
yeah,
And there's a new concept I came across. I'd like
mm,
to hear your thoughts on it. Is that we've always used the idea of translation. We
yeah,
translate, we translate, we
mm,
translate. A while back, while I was working, one of my managers said, "Don't translate,
mm,
transcreate."
mm,
So, in a sense, that whatever text you have from a
mm,
language, so for example, you have English.
yeah,
When you take the English text,
mm,
do not translate it, transcreate it in a way
mhm,
in Arabic
yeah,
that gives the same meaning or the same feeling rather than translating.
for sure.
Now, I'd like to hear your opinion on that. And is it difficult between both languages, or do you see it's possible one way or the other?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. As you might guess from some of the things that I've said, but there's so many examples of that. So like, okay, يعطيك العافية. What does يعطيك العافية mean?
In Arabic, in English?
Yeah.
Um,
May God, Allah يعطيك العافية, may God give you well-being or something like that,
okay,
right?
big.
Right.
Okay.
But when do you use it? I mean, you can use يعطيك العافية in so many situations. Sometimes it almost means like thank you. I mean, depending on the situation,
صح,
right?
correct.
So, but like if you translate that, like I don't know, you hand me the coffee and I say in English, may God give you well-being. Or if you say that to someone native English speaker, they'll be like,
Does it make sense?
that sounds incredibly polite and very nice, but I have no idea what you're trying to communicate to me. Um, so that's where we have to actually figure out, no, what are we actually communicating, and then try to convey that in a different language. And that's the challenge of translation.
So what is الله يعطيك العافية.
It depends on the situation, right? I mean, there isn't one situation. But you know, even like شخبارك, right? What's شخبارك in English?
How are you?
Sort of, yeah. I mean, that's kind of used that way, but like,
Translation, what are your news?
yeah, what's your news?
What's
But
your
like, no
news?
one really asks that. I think the closest in my mind actually is like, what's up? Like,
What's up? Yes, what's up?
you know, so it's not a literal, but that's sort of what we mean by it. So,
Or break a leg.
yeah, all these idioms, of course, are
Yes.
even the most difficult. You know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Idioms and poetry. Sometimes even poetry, like I remember there's. But by the way, when it comes to culture wise,
Mm.
so what's your aspect when you
Mm.
when you read the English literature,
Mm.
come poems,
Mm.
Shakespeare, Hamlets, and
Yeah.
all these things, and you go to the Arabic side of storytelling,
Mm.
what do you see when it comes to communicating between these two separate worlds?
Mm.
What do you see in common, and what do you see that there are differences between both of them?
Ooh. That's a big question, I think.
These these are the questions we want.
Yeah. Well, okay. One interesting thing, and I'm not like an expert in poetry in English or in Arabic, but
All sorts of literature in
yeah,
that
sure.
regard.
But even in poetry, you know, it's interesting. Like, okay, you have Shakespeare sonnets, you have all sorts of poetry, whatever, and I think what's shared is obviously this sense of beauty of expression, and you know, using images to communicate ideas beyond just like the simple, you know, direct meaning. So I think that's shared probably across all forms of poetry in various languages. But this maybe comes back to a little bit of the thing we were talking about earlier about individual versus communal. So like I've been to, you know, friends istiraha, and we're sitting around and they're like doing poetry, like you know, they're just, some they're making up, some they're reciting from other sources. um, but there's something very cool about, you know, when you get to the end of the line that rhymes and
Yes,
everyone repeats it,
yes, true.
right? That's a very communal experience of poetry. Like we don't really do that in English, you know. I mean, we don't even sit around and just recite poems. That's not a super common like hanging out on a Friday night kind of activity
Mhm.
anymore. Maybe at some point. uh, so I do think there's something different culturally there, even just that is a skill or a value that people still hold. But then coupled with the communal aspect of it, this is something we're like enjoying together, not only appreciating the eloquence of the person giving it. And so I
Okay.
think that's quite nice.
Well, I'm not trying to be biased here, but I believe in one way or the other, it's about the rhythm of the language itself. So if
Mm,
I'm comparing the rhythm between English and Arabic,
yeah,
poem-wise, maybe because I'm okay more to the east when it comes to that.
yeah,
Because now when I imagine when someone recites a poet in English and at the end we expect him to repeat like the final words, I will not feel very comfortable. Rather than the Arabic, at least the final
yeah,
word, yes, it has a certain meaning that you want to deliver.
yeah,
So the rhythm of the language
yeah.
could affect the way you approach it. Do you
Could
agree?
be, could be. Like I said, I'm not a poetry expert in either language. Actually, it's one of my life goals. I would love to be able to understand Arabic poetry like better. It is quite difficult for me even now. You know, though I understand Arabic pretty well. You know, poetry is, because it has so much of the imagery and the metaphor and
Mhm.
all of these things. It is pretty difficult. So yeah, but I mean, even in English poetry, there's different, you know, meter and rhythm and rhyme schemes and all of these kinds of things. So I'm quite confident that that is different in Arabic poetry, but to fully compare them, I think would take someone a bit more advanced than myself.
بس أنا سؤال بشكل عام
Hmm.
أن اللي فهمته بشكل عام بعلم اللغويات
Hmm.
أن الشخص ممكن لما يتكلم لغة
Hmm.
غير شخصيته لما يتكلم لغة ثانية، أتكلم عن نفسي لما أتكلم عربي غير لما
Hmm.
أتكلم عن إنجليزي.
ايوه.
علم اللغويات كيف يفسرها وأنت كيف تفسرونها بشكل عام كعلم لغويات؟
يعني انت قصدك هل يكون اسهل
لأ
او
كشخصية مثلًا أنا الحين لما أجي
اه
أتكلم باللغة الإنجليزية
Hmm.
مثلًا أنا ممكن أكون واثق أكثر، ممكن أكون عندي مصطلحات أكثر، ممكن مثلًا أتكلم بلغة بصوت أعلى،
Hmm.
بينما أتكلم باللغة العربية مثلًا على سبيل المثال ممكن يكون صوتي أخف، ممكن
Hmm.
أتكلم بسرعة أكثر،
Hmm.
فحيقول لك إن personality أو شخصية الشخص تختلف باختلاف اللغة.
اتوقع ممكن في جانبين. يعني اول جانب في بعض يعني علماء في اللغويات يقولون مثلا اذا طفل في البيت الأم تتكلم لغة والأب يتكلم لغة أخرى.
أيوه،
هو الأفضل إنه الأب يتكلم معاه في لغة واحدة والأم تتكلم معاه في لغة ثانية، يعني
إمم،
عشان ما يتلخبط بين اللغتين. فهذا أكيد مع مرور الوقت ممكن يشكل الشخصية، يعني أنا مع أمي أتصرف كذا، أما مع أبوي يعني أتصرف كذا مع والدي.
أوكي،
فبهذه الطريقة يعني ممكن في دماغ شخص اللغة تكون مرتبطة بشخصية معينة، يمكن. بس الشيء الثاني إنه في اللغويات في مناظرة على هل اللغة آآ تعكس الأفكار والّا تشكل الأفكار؟ ففي شخص سيبر وورف يعني هذا في النظرية اللي عنده إنه فعلًا يعني تشكل الأفكار، تشكل طريقة التفكير عند الشخص، بس صعب تثبت تمامًا يعني هل هو السبب والّا هو نتيجة تعلم اللغة، بس يعني هذا الفكرة موجودة. يعني ليش هنا في كم كلمة للجمل، للإبل،
لأن الناس كانت
للناقة؟
عندهم بس إبل وقتها، كان هو رمز الثقافة وقتها،
أيوه، بس
صح،
يعني هو مهم جدًا هنا.
صح، بالضبط،
أمّا في أمريكا كم كلمة عندنا؟ واحدة.
كمل، انتهينا،
ما في غيره.
صح،
طيب هو يعني ليش كل هذه الكلمات طلعت؟ هل هو عشان يعني اللغة شكّلت هذا الشيء، والّا هو النتيجة للشيء اللي أصلًا كان مهم؟ فهذا يعني هذا مثال بسيط، بس يعني ناس يتجادلون على هذا الموضوع.
طب بس أحاول أفهم المثال،
إمم،
يعني مثلًا أنا الآن عندي مثلًا فكرة مثلًا فكرة باقدّم ضيافة معيّنة، أنا والله ب
أوكي.
ب ب باروح حق شخص باجيب معاي مثلًا خلينا نقول طبق حلا ذهب والّا
إمم،
أيًا كان للشخص
إمم،
الفلاني
اهم،
بالطريقة هذه، فحين المناظرة هذه إنه يقول لك إن كون مثلًا لغتي الأم هي اللغة العربية هي شكلت هذا التفكير، أو
إمم.
أنا شخصيًا شكلت هذا التفكير، هذا كذا بشكل أو بآخر؟
ممكن ممكن هذا مو بس نفس الموضوع، بس إنه في تراكم أشياء من وراء الكلمة،
أوكي،
يعني هذا مصطلح ما أعرفه بالعربي يعني، بس connotative meaning versus denotative meaning، يعني وش المعنى بالتفصيل،
أوكي،
أما وش كل الأشياء المرتبطة بها، بهذا
أوكي،
الكلمة. ف زي الضيافة، يعني
أيوه،
في أشياء كثيرة مرتبطة بهذا الفكرة.
صحيح،
آمم بس يعني بعض الأشياء ممكن في 20 كلمة للفكرة، للمفهوم
اهم،
الفلاني. طيب ليش في 20 كلمة لهذا الشيء؟ هل هو عشان يعني آآ هذا السياق وعشان كذا يعني بدأوا يخترعوا كلمات جديدة عشان يفهمون، يعني مثلًا الناس اللي عايشين في كندا وفي ثلج، عندهم 20 كلمة للثلج،
اهم،
لأنواع الثلج.
اهم،
زي أنواع الإبل أو أشياء
اهم،
زي كذا. ف يعني في نظريات كثيرة على الموضوع، بس أكيد اللغة على الأقل تعكس يعني طرق مختلفة في التفكير،
اهم.
أكيد.
بس مو بس كذا حتى بعد زيادة على كذا،
إمم،
يعني تعقيبًا على كلامك، صحيح إني أنا غلطان فيها، إن في اللغة العربية على سبيل المثال في إن الكلمة الواحدة في لها معاني عديدة،
إمم،
عكس مثلًا بعض اللغات اللي الكلمة لها معنى واحد، فعلى سبيل
إمم،
المثال كلمة عين باللغة
إمم،
العربية، عين عندها 10 معاني، عين
إمم،
اللي هو
إمم،
البئر، عين الشخص،
إمم،
عين اللي هو جاسوس أو غيره من
إمم،
هذه الأمور،
إمم،
عكس مثلًا بعض اللغات الثانية اللي لأ،
إمم،
تعال الوضع مختلف فيها شويتين،
إمم.
فهنا ممكن تتوقع كذلك إن عمق وغزارة اللغة تعكس هذا المفهوم بشكل أو بآخر؟
ممكن ممكن جزء من هذا بعد يعني إنه تاريخ اللغة، يعني مثلًا العربي لها تاريخ طويل.
اهم.
أمّا الإنجليزية يعني هي أصلًا مكوّنة من لغات مختلفة.
جرمانية ولاتينية اللي فهمته.
يعني أكثر شيء. فلذلك لمّا الكلمة الفلانية طلعت يعني ممكن لها شيء معيّن مقصود. آآ أمّا العربي فيه تراكم أفكار وتراكم مفاهيم، في سياق معيّن كان لها معنى معيّن، أمّا سياق آخر، يعني فكل لغة زي كذا إلى حدٍ ما.
اهم،
بس أنا المقصد إنه عشان العربي لها اللغة العربية لها هذا التاريخ الثري
اهم،
ومتسلسل إلى حدٍ ما. يمكن هذا يشرح ليش أو يفسر ليش عندنا هذا الوضع.
طيب سؤالي هل اللي يطلعون وياكم يدخلون اللي هو المعهد حقكم اللي هو
إمم،
اسمه إيش اسم المعهد حقكم؟
أريبياس.
أريبياس، هل في بعدين جزء منهم اللي يروح يتعلم هو بنفسه يتعلم اللغة الفصحى، والّا هم تركيزهم بس على اللغة
هو في ناس، بس هو عادةً في المراحل المتقدمة وعلى حسب الحاجة، يعني مثلًا كان في دبلوماسيين زي ما قُلت لك كان عندهم اختبار لازم يعني يحققوا معيار معين
اهم،
في الفصحى، فأكيد يعني يدرسون الفصحى، والأغلب يدرسون إلى حدٍ ما، يعني في النهاية إذا وصلوا للمراحل المتقدمة، بس في بعضهم يعني قالوا لنا أنا ما يهمني القراءة والكتابة بس التحدث، فيعني يختلف الوضع
القراءة والكتابة
من
بس
شخص لشخص يعني.
كانوا يتعلمون القراءة والكتابة صح والّا لأ في العربية؟
يتعلمون
إمم،
القراءة والكتابة، بس حتى يقرؤون في المراحل الأولية يقرؤون بالأعمية، يعني حتى نكتب بعض النصوص بالأعمية عشان اللي يسمعوا يعني يكون نفس الشيء اللي هم يشوفونه بشكل مكتوب.
أوكي،
بس بعدين شوي شوي يعني يعرفون الفصحى إنه أوكي، بس إذا تبغى توصل نفس الفكرة بس بطريقة رسمية هذا هي.
رائع جدًا،
إمم،
أوكي صراحةً شيء مرة حلو.
إمم،
أستاذ جويل جزاك الله خير على وجودك، ما
شكرًا
قصرت الله
يعطيك
يحفظك،
العافية.
هسه أخذنا كثير من وقتك لكن صراحةً كانت محادثة جدًا، جدًا يعني رائعة لا تُمَل،
شكرًا
يمكن عاد
لك.
محادثات بعد ناخذ بعد ساعة زيادة ما عندي
لا، لا،
مشكلة، كل الشكر لك صراحةً على وجودك، إن شاء الله نشوفك المرة الجاية،
يعطيك العافية،
قواكم
مشكور،
الله
يالّا
جميعًا.
مع